Okay, so you've all come to Cardiff to study for a research degree of some description. So welcome to Cardiff for those of you who haven't been here before. Welcome to the School of Medicine for those of you who haven't previously been in the School of Medicine. I know many of you actually have been in Cardiff previously. So welcome to Cardiff. So I'm actually based here only one day a week, which is Wednesdays, and we're going to run an open office Wednesday morning when you can come and see me, or if I'm not around, then one of the other of the team, the postgraduate research team, upstairs on the second floor, just along from the postgraduate office, which I'm sure many of you have already found. I spend most of my time down in the Hayden Ellis building, where I suspect one or two of you will also be based. So, welcome to Cardiff. For those of you that don't know Cardiff, Cardiff has a lot to offer. The Welsh are very keen on sport, particularly rugby. Apparently this is the largest covered stadium in Europe. And it's actually great to go and watch the rugby, and the roof's shut here because it was probably raining. It nearly always is. However, this can be very expensive and quite hard to get tickets. So you can actually go along and see the Cardiff Blues, and I get less and less keen on recommending this as the years go by because the Cardiff Blues have been playing worse and worse. But you can pitch up at the Arms Park when they're playing and get a standing ticket for 15 quid. And, you know, while you're in Wales, you ought to experience what the Welsh do, and what the Welsh do is watch rugby. You need to learn to sing the Welsh national anthem if you're going to go to an international. But you can also do slightly more highbrow things. This is the Millennium Centre down the bay. You can go to the opera for £5. It's a complete bargain. So even if you hate it and you leave at the first interval, you haven't really wasted much money, and it's an experience that everybody should try. It's world-class opera at a cut price, actually, so it's fantastic. And many of the theatres, and certainly St David's Hall, have schemes whereby students can go to performances, buying a ticket on the night for a £5 or so it's worth taking the opportunity. And many of you, of course, will realise that this is where the rift in the space-time continuum exists and might want to go and see it. Most of the visitors who come to see me who have children actually come to Cardiff because they want to go to see the Doctor Who exhibition. They don't come to see us at all. There's great shopping. You can see it's a lovely day here. It's typical Cardiff weather. And I realise this is a terribly middle-aged thing to show you because actually I love John Lewis and we only got it fairly recently. But I'm told there's great other shopping by my daughter and also great nightlife, which you'll have to ask your peers about because I'm not in a position to inform you about that. But also there's great surrounding countryside really close by and accessible by public transport. So there's lots and lots of things that you could do in Cardiff as well as studying. And, you know, in the interests of work-life balance, which everybody's very keen on these days, I'd recommend that you certainly try some of this stuff that's around. So I'm going to give you a brief welcome, and then we've got various people from different parts of the School of Medicine and the university who are going to talk to you about issues that you probably need to know about. Myra Woods is coming up from the Graduate College. There's Bob's going to talk to you about biomedical techniques. Carl, who's the school safety officer, is going to talk to you about health and safety, your responsibilities and ours. We've got someone from Student Support who's also representing the International Office for Overseas Students. A couple of our students who are on the Postgrad Society are going to talk to you about the student experience and about Postgraduate Research Day, which is happening in November. And then we've got someone from Central Biotechnology Services, which will tell you about some of the technical stuff that is on offer in the university that you can use. Then we'll have a question and answer session, which where you can ask us any questions that you might want. So, the reason I'm here talking to you today is that I'm actually the Director of Postgraduate Research for the school. So I've been in post for a number of years now, so if you have a problem, you should come and see me because undoubtedly I will almost certainly have seen something similar before. I have to say that most of our students don't have any problems. 90% of our students I probably never see personally because they have an issue. But for those of you who do, don't hesitate to come and see us because that's what we're there for. We're there to help. But as I say, most people come in, they do however long their study is, they get the degree they're aiming for, and certainly most people who do a PhD and submit it will get that PhD. We have very few people who don't get the PhD at that point. So, perhaps 1 or 2 cases a year in some years, no cases at all. MDs don't have quite such a high success rate, although we have changed the scheme, so we hope that that will now be better. And if you want to keep in touch with each other, we have the Graduate Centre upstairs, but also we have this Facebook page down here on which people post events and share things that they think might be of interest. So it's always worth clicking onto. So our aim is to help you to get your PhD, MD, MPhil, MRes. For a PhD, we aim to get you to that qualification within 3 years. So it is our aim that you get that within 3 years. Now, many of your colleagues, your more senior colleagues who've been here for longer, will tell you that actually you've got 4 years to get it. Well, in theory, there is a 4th year, which is for writing up. However, the further people get into that 4th year without submitting, the less likely it is that they will submit. Now, our submission rates in the School of Medicine are well over 80%, but I have to say the goalposts have just been moved, and the Vice-Chancellor has just announced that he thinks our submission rate should be 95%. Well, I don't know whether we'll achieve this. As a standard, I think we once got to 92%, and that was our best year, and we're certainly over 80% this year, because people are submitting. So unless you're actually on a 4-year scheme, you should aim to submit within the 3 years. And to do that, we have a number of systems to help you, and the Graduate College, which people are going to talk about, also have systems to help you. So we also contribute to the university helping to implement various guidelines and standards, etc. So we are quality assured in the way that all the teaching is quality assured as well. And that's probably of less interest to you, but it means that our degrees are really solid academic qualifications and that we maintain this. So I thought it worth showing you this really dry slide of the school structure, just so that you know who's who. So Paul Morgan is the Dean of the School of Medicine. Now, Paul is actually stepping down from this role at the end of the year, but currently he is the Dean, and he runs the school along with a school executive board, which consists of himself in the chair, the directors of our various institutes, the school manager, and the NHS Director of Research and Development. And there are various other people who may go to these meetings depending on what the topic is. They meet weekly. And then we have a structure of a series of research institutes, and most of you will end up, you'll either be associated with an institute already or you'll end up associated with an institute. And most of what you do will actually be within that institute. So we have molecular and experimental medicine, which for whom the director is Colin Diane. Psychological medicine and clinical neuroscience, that's my institute. It's the head of the institute is Professor Mike Owen. It's also an MRC centre. And we are very largely now based in the new Hayden Ellis building downtown. And I have to say, it's lovely. It's an upgrade in my accommodation and everybody else's. But the best thing about it is that previously we were scattered all over the hospital, and now we're all together, and that makes for a much better experience. Chris Butler is the Director of Primary Care and Public Health. They're very largely in Neuadd Mariana on the far side of the site, but not completely. Cancer and genetics has 2 leads, Julian Sampson, who I guess is probably mostly genetics, and John Chester, who is probably mostly cancer. Infection and immunity, which is looked after by Vincent Piguet. And then we have 2 other institutes with whom we have some, but not very many, postgraduate research students. So Translation, Innovation, Methodologies and Engagement is a sort of portmanteau institute that deals with precisely what it says here. So it's more commercially facing, and it also contains Central Biotechnology Services, who run a lot of our methodology and facilities. And then we have medical education. This is a very large department and takes care of the undergraduate medical education and a lot of postgraduate taught training as well. And these are run by, respectively, Ian Weeks, who's acting in this role, and John Bly. So here's Paul, smiling at you. That's the way we like to see him, smiling at us. So for our own management, I report directly to Paul. So actually, I don't report very much to Paul. I only report things to Paul if I think that there's a really serious problem. So normally, we don't have such serious problems, so we can deal with it ourselves. And a problem that may seem completely insuperable and insurmountable to you may well be something that we could deal with really easily, so please do come and talk to us. And then the Research Degrees Office provide most of the administration for all matters relating to postgraduate research in the school. We've had a number of changes which have meant that administratively things haven't been quite as smooth as they might have been over the last year or so. However, we are hoping that things have settled down a bit now, and that admin will become smoother. Part of this is that we've been restructured into colleges, so that the School of Medicine is now part of the College of Biomedical and Life Sciences. And it hasn't been entirely clear who's responsible for what. But for the moment, postgraduate research is remaining firmly within the school, although I'm sure there will be some changes through the college as time goes by. But your first port of call should always be the Research Degrees Office for any issues to do with postgraduate research, to do with your degree. So I'm actually assisted in my role by the Research Degrees Committee. And the Research Degrees Committee, the chair is the director of PGR, that's me at the moment. My deputy director, who's Anwen Williams, I don't think she's here today, but you'll undoubtedly meet her around. Stands in for me when I'm not there. Each of the institute has a postgraduate research representative who is a senior academic with lots of research and supervisory experience who sits on this. And then we have people who represent a number of other particular constituencies which might not otherwise get terribly well represented by the institute representatives. So these are a clinical research and MD rep, who's Aled Rees, who some of you will know, a representative for the Welsh Clinical Academic Training Scheme, who is Donald Fraser, who's, and they're both in molecular and experimental medicine. We have an equality and diversity representative, Bronwyn Evans, the director and the deputy director of the biomedical methods course and the MRes, which some of you are on. And we also have student representatives who clearly change every year. They're usually the members of the Postgraduate Society. And it's very important to us that we actually have student representatives on this committee. So I hope that when the time comes, you'll consider standing for it, because actually it's really quite important that we know what... It's all very well for us to say, wouldn't it be a good idea if we did this, that and the other? But that's no good if it's not something that you actually feel is useful or needed. So it's very good to have your feedback on what might be important for us. So these are the school's institutes here, and these are your academic points of contact. So these are the institute PGR representatives. As I say, they've all got a lot of supervisory experience, and these are the contact emails. So the slides will be put on the web, and this is being videoed. So you will be able to get this information very readily from the PGR website. And then, very important, the Postgraduate Research Degrees Office. So Aled Holt is currently PGR manager. Aled, would you like to stand up? So this is Aled at the back here. So he's your first port of call. Sarah, who many of you will have already met. Is she here? No, okay. Because she deals with admissions, applications, enrolment and things like that, and has been doing it for quite a while. So if you have a problem, Sarah will probably know the answer. Frances, Fran, stand up. Frances, she'll deal with monitoring and appraisals, and eventually she deals with examinations and submissions. You don't want to get on the wrong side of Frances. She'll be after you if you hand in things late. And Jo, is the admin assistant for the MRes, but she does other work on admissions for us as well. But effectively, everybody will be in the office, and you can go and talk to any one of these people, and your issue will get passed on to the right person and hopefully resolved. We can resolve most things. So the institutes also have administrative contacts, and these are they. The same email as was on the previous slide applies to these people here, but we've also given you their phone numbers. So if you need to get in touch with them on administrative matters, that's who they are. So what do we do and when do we help? Well, hopefully we've helped you on the way into the PhD programme. The university's administrative ways are slightly Byzantine, I suppose is one way of putting it, complex anyway. But we now hope to help you during your programme and completing your programme. And when I say PhD here, effectively I mean all the degrees that we offer. So particularly for the PhD programme, in year one, you've registered. You will do some taught courses unless you are on a 1+4, in which case you've probably already done those, or will do them completely this year. You may well attend meetings. We'd expect you to start to give talks about your work, and you'll do your research. So it often feels as though it takes a long time to get going, but I wouldn't worry about that too much right at the beginning. If you feel you haven't got going after Christmas, then perhaps you might like to talk about this with your supervisors. Year two is a very intensive research year, and at this point you certainly should be presenting your work. That's our aim. And most institutes will aim to get you to present your work locally, nationally, and often internationally. Many of our students go to international meetings to present their work. In year three, you should complete. You should write up and you should timetable this in. I normally recommend to my own students that they stop doing any bench work in July of that final year and write up for 3 months. And I reckon you can write a chapter. So most theses are sort of 6 or 7 chapters, and I reckon you can write a chapter every 2 weeks if you don't do anything else. It can feel overwhelming, and we do offer more training, and the Graduate College offers writing up sessions at that point. But nevertheless, right now at the beginning, you should think that that is your aim at the end, to spend those last 3 months writing up. Many of you will have written stuff up during your research, and that's enormously helpful, but it still has to be set into a thesis structure. And then you'll be vivaed. Few people are actually vivaed within the 3 years, but normally you would expect to be vivaed within about 3 months of submission. And then you get your PhD, your MD, your MPhil, or your MRes. So the MRes, of course, is taught but has a substantial research component. And I think those of you on the MRes, Bob will talk to you separately, has taught to you.
I have taught them.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
If they remember.
So you're going to have a talk about the Graduate College, but I just thought that it was worth me giving them a plug, because I would certainly recommend what they have to offer in the way of training, in allowing you to organise workshops. They're particularly keen on interdisciplinary workshops. It's great experience. It looks good on your CV, and it allows you often to invite people who you would like to hear talk, who you wouldn't otherwise get the chance to do. And it looks after a lot of quality assurance for the university. As I say, this is something that goes on in the background that won't necessarily concern you, but nevertheless is very important for us as a university. So, progress monitoring. Now, I kind of feel this is a sort of watch this space moment, because progress monitoring during your research degree is changing. So we are a pilot school for a new process that is essentially the same process, but it's going to be done online using SIMS, which are used for enrolment, student information and management services. But we're hopeful that this will actually prove to be easier than our previous paper/email-based system, which had a number of glitches that it was very easy administratively for people to occasionally fall out of the system or for things to go wrong. So hopefully this will give us a central portal and make things much easier. However, I have to say that we have not yet seen the new system because it has not yet been finished. So this is a worry for us. You don't need to worry about it too much because we'll certainly sort something out if it isn't online. We are promised that it will be there by the end of the year because that's the first time when you actually have to do something. However, the monitoring guidelines about what you have to do have just been updated, and these will be posted on the PGR website. And we'll attempt to get rid of all the old versions because the new version actually is in line with this new SIMS process. So basically, if your start month is October, then by the 31st of December, you have to undertake what the university calls initial reporting. And essentially, this is you need to deposit a research plan and plus one or two other bits of documentation. But the research plan, for most of you, will effectively be whatever scientific was written in the school application form, or if you had an external grant, you can simply post whatever was in the external grant. But there are some other issues that you'll need to think about, such as planning out the work and timetabling to do this. We'll then have an interim report. Now, the problem with the SIMS process is that it's not confidential in the sense that everything that's posted on there can be seen by your supervisor, by you, and actually by me. And a number of years ago, when we conducted a survey, one of the things that our students asked for was a means by which they could report confidentially to us if they weren't comfortable with anything about their PhD they didn't want to talk to their supervisor about. So we've left in an interim reporting period here at 6 months, where we will actually have a hard copy confidential questionnaire that you can return to us in case you have any issues, which we can then deal with. But then after this initial reporting, we go back to SIMS. You do a 6-monthly report, which is actually at 9 months. It's incredibly confusing, I have to say, and we've had trouble getting our processes in line with the university processes, but hopefully, and we've tried to call them what the university calls them, which doesn't necessarily sit very well. So this is essentially a series of tick box forms with space for comments. But then also at 9 months, you'll submit a probationary progress report. Everybody submits this at 9 months. It's a 2,000-word report. Whether you're part-time, full-time, whatever degree you're doing, you should submit this at 12 months. The only exception is people doing an MPhil who've actually already written up. They wouldn't need to do this, but you have to have already written up, essentially, otherwise you'll get reviewed. And this has to be submitted by the 30th of June, so that's 9 months after your registration date, which for most of you is October, although clearly this will be offset for people who start at different times of year. And then you will have your appraisal at some point in July for people who start in October. We aim to have those appraisals fairly quickly afterwards. And the appraisal is key to progression for your PhD or other degree. So the initial report, a 2-page research plan, the interim report, non-SIMS, and it's student self-assessment and it's confidential. The supervisor report you can always ask to see. And also at the 9-month point you will be asked about, and you should keep a record of your supervision meetings, which you should copy back to your supervisor so they can point out if you've made any fundamental errors in what you think you've talked about. Training, seminars attended, talks and presentations given locally and externally, any awards won, including bursaries for meeting attendance. And there should be a space for you to do this online, but I think the Graduate College might have more information about that because I couldn't find it. And then the annual appraisal at 9 months. This is really important. It consists of a set of supervisor and student report, and then you write a 2,000-word report which includes your background, your aims and your hypothesis. So you outline your research question. It will include any data generated, but the panels recognise that there often isn't a huge amount of data that's been generated at that first appraisal. But they want to see that you've got a clear plan for what's going to happen next. And some sort of discussion. There will be a revised research plan in light of what's happened in those 9 months, practically or in your data analysis. A timetable for years 2 and 3. and importantly, an outline of your thesis content. So this makes you think about the structure of your thesis, and this will dictate how your work should progress. You will then have the appraisal panel interview, which usually has 3 academics on it, at least one of whom will be an expert in the area in which your research is taking place. And this is really good practice for the final viva. So it's a great opportunity to use, because they will ask them, they're all external examiners, they will ask you the sort of question that an external examiner might very well ask you. So you don't want to feel too threatened by their questioning. It's a very useful opportunity for you to actually get some really good feedback about your work. And we do ask all of our appraisal panels to be constructive. And then you get an outcome. And the outcome is, for most of our students, the outcome is a straightforward progress. Occasionally, we get people who are deferred, so you'll usually get 3 months in which to put things right. Sometimes the deferral is because of something that is to do with you. Occasionally, the deferral is because of something to do essentially with the project or the supervision that needs sorting out before we can be sure that you will actually be able to get through your PhD in the 3 years. And I have to say, I've never directly excluded anyone as a result of an appraisal interview. We don't exclude people very often anyway. Sometimes people withdraw for various reasons. But this is eventually, if you're deferred and you don't meet the objectives that are set out in that deferral, which will be extensively discussed with the supervisory team and possibly with the director of your institute, then the option is there to exclude people. You always get at least 3 months before that happens. It's really rare. Your responsibilities essentially are attendance, so you should discuss with your supervisor what they expect of you and what you need to do. Many of you will have taken responsibility for your own time for a number of years and will be well used to this. But research is perhaps a little bit different, and it'll take a while for some of you to get used to the way that it works. We have the biomedical research course, which Bob is going to talk about briefly. There are a number of different seminar series. The main science seminar series happens on a Thursday lunchtime, and they can be quite good. They happen in the Henry Wellcome building, just over on the far side of the site, usually, not always. But there are lots of local seminar series. You should make the most of them. There's nothing like sitting in the back of a seminar looking at someone describing a technique and thinking, oh, I could use that. Particularly if they're there, you can go around and talk to them afterwards and see if it's really appropriate for the question you want to answer. You should always look to present your work. Most people will present their work probably at least once a year in the department or institute or elsewhere. And this is a really good opportunity to get feedback on what you've done. And it's your responsibility to know when you are due to submit the various appraisal documents and to do it. So the automated SIN system will send you an email, and I think it will send you one reminder. Although, as I say, I haven't had the full details, so I don't know. But it's your responsibility. So if it doesn't send you another reminder and you don't put it in, then actually you will count as not progressing and end up being excluded. So when things go wrong or you just need some advice, and this, lots of people have sort of problems of various different sorts. Actually, speaking to your friends and local colleagues can be very helpful. Speaking to your supervisor or co-supervisor. All of you should have a mentor appointed this year, because we've got a mentorship scheme now written up and it's in the handbook. So you can speak to your mentor. If it's more serious than that, you could speak to your institute director or whoever is the line manager of your supervisor. You can speak to Aled or other people in the PGR office. You can speak to your local research degrees committee member. Every institute has one, and they're very familiar with the sort of problems that arise and often have to deal with them. You can speak to me. I'm around and I'm always available on email. And if things get really serious, you can speak to the dean. So there are lots of people that you can talk to, but you can actually resolve quite a lot simply by talking to people at an early point before things have really got out of hand. If you've got a technique that just won't work, and it just won't work, and it just won't work, don't just keep going back and doing it. consult your friends and your colleagues, or go and see your supervisor and say, it's just not working. What am I doing wrong? So there's a couple of really good pieces, little reviews or papers written by Jonathan Udall, who actually came and talked here last year, called How to Succeed in Science. I highly recommend that you read them. They're very good. And also, we have someone who comes and does a session called The Seven Secret of Effective Researchers, or something like that. He's an Australian. But actually, it's a really good session. It's a half day, I think, but it's 2 or 3 hours. And that's a fantastic session. He does it for supervisors as well. So I highly recommend that you go along and do that. And that will be advertised through the Graduate College. And most of all, good luck. But remember, fortune favours the prepared mind. So Louis Pasteur, who I think we'd all agree was a great scientist, you need to know what you're looking at when you see it. And the only way to be able to do that is to have done the reading and to understand the experiments that you're doing. So don't forget to read. And Thomas Jefferson said, "I'm a great believer in luck, and I find the harder I work, the more I have of it." In other words, luck isn't just luck. So this is my email and telephone number. And this is actually the PGR office's telephone number.